I knew she was going to be great, and I knew that we needed a really great point guard to give us a shot, right? That we had some other pieces, but when you got her, that's when you started to really see that this kid was wired so differently and what she could do. I mean, she makes the extraordinary ordinary.
I believe growing her physical strength and her ability to exist in spaces against bigger, stronger athletes than what she faced in college. So obviously, future Hall of Famer, and has had a great impact.
Caitlin Clark's arrival in the WNBA has transformed the league in ways few could have predicted. Her exceptional talent and magnetic personality have drawn waves of new fans, forcing teams to rethink their game plans. Coaches across the league are scrambling to figure out how to contain her, a challenge that's proving much easier said than done. Clark has become the center of nearly every conversation surrounding the WNBA, and coaches are constantly asked to weigh in. While most try to stay diplomatic, their words often reveal just how much respect she's already earned. If you listen closely, you can sense the admiration behind their cautious tones. These coaches know her game better than anyone. They're the ones drawing up the defenses that rarely work. That's why, even when they sound reserved, there's no trace of disrespect. They've seen firsthand how she's rewriting rookie expectations. Still, the coaching world is full of pride, and not everyone's eager to anoint Clark as the league's next unstoppable force just yet. Every coach has to balance honesty with loyalty. Public comments can easily find their way into locker rooms, and no one wants their players thinking they'd rather have Clark on their roster, even if deep down, they might. At the same time, being dismissive of her can backfire, since Clark feeds off doubt better than anyone. And when it comes to personality, some coaches are more outspoken than others. That's what makes the words of former players, turned coaches like Becky Hammon especially interesting. Hammon, now leading the Las Vegas Aces after a standout playing and coaching career, has never been one to hold back, and her perspective on Clark cuts through the noise. Coach Becky Hammon has made it clear she both respects and genuinely likes Caitlin Clark. But she's also standing firm with the WNBA veterans who gave the rookie a tough introduction to the pros. In Hammon's view, the league's competitive culture, not race or media-driven narratives, explains why Clark's early experience has been so intense. To her, it's just how the WNBA has always been, tough, physical, and built on earning respect. Hammon's take reminds everyone to stop overanalyzing and just appreciate what Clark brings to the court, a fearless scorer who can flat-out play. The reality is that just about every coach and player in the league would love to have her on their team. But since most don't, it's easier to act like her success isn't a big deal. One of the clearest examples came from Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve. Back when Clark was still at Iowa and generating draft buzz, Reeve spoke passionately about the idea of teams intentionally losing games to draft her. Her comments highlighted both the excitement and the tension surrounding Clark's arrival, and how one player has managed to shake up the entire WNBA conversation.
Are we going to tank for Caitlin Clark and like that? That's just not how I would do things. If Glenn came to me and said, Cheryl, I want you to do that, I probably would step aside and say, let someone else do that. I don't believe in that. I think if you get there organically, and that's what you deserve, great. I am never going to try to be in that situation. Caitlin Clark might make you want to lose every game, but...
Many coaches echoed Cheryl Reeve's earlier frustrations, though her comments at the time came across as a little over the top. The notion of losing games on purpose to secure a top draft pick is widely criticized as poor sportsmanship and a tactic that rarely pays off. Directly calling out a team owner and mentioning Caitlin Clark by name only added to the noise. While there's no solid proof that any WNBA teams intentionally tanked last season, it's fair to think that a few near the bottom didn't exactly mind dropping extra games, especially with a draft class as talented as the one Clark led. Since then, though, Reeve's tone has noticeably evolved. Her latest comments about Clark sound far more measured and respectful, and honestly, her perspective now carries real weight.
Physical strength and her ability to exist in spaces against bigger, stronger athletes than what she faced in college. So obviously, future Hall of Famer, and has had a.
Rookies usually need time to find their footing before they can truly impact the pros, so it wasn't shocking that the Indiana Fever struggled early in the season. But as Caitlin Clark adapted to the pace and pressure of the WNBA, the difference became undeniable. The team started to gel, playing with more confidence and cohesion. Stephanie White, a former Fever player herself and now head coach of the Connecticut Sun, has been one of the most thoughtful voices analyzing this transformation. As the reigning WNBA Coach of the Year, White's insights carry credibility, and her breakdown of the Fever's progress offers a balanced look at both Clark's growth and the team's steady improvement.
You're a young team that's really growing into yourself. The understanding of one another, the timing, the pace, the connectedness just wasn't quite there early. It's there now. Everybody on the floor understands how, when, and where Caitlin Clark can get them the ball.
Stephanie White's perspective might just be the most balanced take we've heard on Caitlin Clark's rookie season. She points out what's obvious to those watching closely. The Fever's early struggles were less about talent and more about chemistry. Their turnaround wasn't just fueled by Clark's rising confidence and production, but also by the way her teammates began finding their rhythm alongside her. White gives Clark credit for being a catalyst, while also reminding everyone that team success takes time and patience. Her grounded approach mirrors the mindset of several top WNBA coaches who faced Clark this season. One of them, Sandy Brondello, the Australian-born head coach of the New York Liberty, offered another standout perspective. When asked about Clark's development, Brondello kept her focus on what she'd actually seen on the court during matchups with Indiana. Rather than echoing media narratives, she delivered a thoughtful, first-hand assessment rooted in the real on-court dynamics, showing how even opponents can appreciate what Clark is building in real time.
Great young talent, and you have to remember that she's a young talent. She's coming into the WNBA for the first time. She's going to be a really good player. I know that much. But it's hard coming in as the number one. Thanks the last time the number one pick has come in and dominated from the start. I think she's had some really good moments. She had 20 in the first game. We were able to keep her to single digits in that last game. But very capable. Can't leave her over. So I think the whole game plan's around her, and she's going to be a player that will continue to grow because I think she's a quick learner. She's got high basketball IQ.
Much has already been said about the immense pressure Caitlin Clark has faced, from her record-breaking college career to becoming the number one overall pick in a loaded WNBA draft. When you consider that spotlight, her smooth transition to the pros looks even more impressive. Especially so when you realize that coaches like Sandy Brondello are throwing every possible defensive scheme at her to this stage. It's clear Clark is evolving into a more complete player, but how high her ceiling goes is anyone's guess. One thing's for sure, nothing is being handed to her. Not on the court, and certainly not in post-game interviews. Los Angeles Sparks head coach Curt Miller is among those who still believe Clark can be contained, at least in moments. After splitting a 2-game series with the Indiana Fever, Miller offered praise for Clark's talent and leadership, but also emphasized his team's defensive adjustments, a reminder that behind every great performance, there's always a tactical chess match at play.
She's so talented and she draws so much attention, and then what's so underrated about her is her passing. Tonight she was able to get to the foul line a lot, which supplemented her offense, but I thought we did a pretty good job.
Coach Curt Miller didn't seem overly intimidated by Caitlin Clark's presence. Whether he was keeping a good poker face or genuinely confident in his defense, he downplayed her impact, pointing out that many of her points came from the free throw line. This, despite Clark dropping 30 points in one game and nearly posting a triple-double in the next. Joe Miller, that still counted as a defensive win. And he's not alone. Several coaches have followed a similar script in post-game pressers, acknowledge Clark's talent, praise their team's defensive effort, but stop short of giving her full credit. It's a subtle trend across the league. Respect without full recognition. One of the most notable examples is Eric Thibault, head coach and lead decision-maker for the Washington Mystics. After facing Clark, Thibault made a point to name and commend each of his defenders who guarded her, making it clear that his focus was on his team's collective effort, not on Clark stealing the spotlight.
Pretty good job one-on-one. They started running her off more screens, and that's a little tougher. Dee's big, trying to navigate all those screens. I thought we did a pretty good job one-on-one. Ariel took a turn on her down the stretch too, trying to keep Ariel out of foul trouble a little bit early in the game. Hey, she makes a tough shot. We forced her into 8 turnovers, but she made some tough ass shots. So credit to
Coach Eric Thibault deserves credit for standing by his players. That's what good leaders do. But in doing so, he might be underselling just how impactful Caitlin Clark truly is. You don't need to be a basketball analyst to see that Clark is far more than a shooter running off screens. She's the offensive engine of the Indiana Fever, a dynamic playmaker who controls tempo, spacing, and flow. Whether she's directing the offense or moving without the ball, she's a constant threat. Sure, her turnovers draw criticism, but that's the cost of carrying so much responsibility. The bigger picture tells a different story. Clark isn't just lifting her team, she's lifting the entire league. Attendance is soaring, sponsorships are booming, and national attention on the WNBA has never been stronger. Her influence extends far beyond the box score. Interestingly, most opposing coaches avoid that subject entirely. But one person who didn't was South Carolina's legendary coach Dawn Staley, Clark's former college rival who defeated her Iowa team in the 2024 NCAA championship game. After that matchup, Staley offered a grounded and gracious perspective on Clark's broader impact, one that went beyond wins, losses, or stats.
Thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport, and it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the #1 pick in the WNBA draft, she's gonna lift that league up.
That was a genuinely classy moment from Coach Dawn Staley. Fresh off a national championship victory, she could have easily kept the spotlight on her own team. Instead, she took a step back and offered heartfelt praise for the very player her team had just beaten, Caitlin Clark. Staley not only congratulated Clark for her incredible college run, but also predicted she'd make an instant impact in the WNBA. Looking back now, her words feel almost prophetic. Even in the heat of celebration, Staley showed a level of perspective that many in the game share quietly. Caitlin Clark is different. Her presence alone is reshaping women's basketball. And while not every coach has been eager to admit it, one of the most surprising and enthusiastic endorsements came from someone who's faced Clark multiple times already. Phoenix Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts. Tibbetts didn't hold back. He praised Clark's confidence, vision, and skill, explaining how her range and court awareness create constant problems for defenses. He also predicted that slowing her down will only get harder as she gains more experience in the league. In his words, this is only the beginning, and the rest of the WNBA better be ready.
Is Clark's shooting ability and passing ability. She puts a lot of pressure on you with, both areas. She can come off and shoot it, but then she's a great passer. And the more she's in the league, she's even going to become a better passer because she's going to see everything. Coaches, teams are throwing everything at her. And, that's what great players see. The more reps they get at it, they're going to continue to improve, and she has that ability.
The truth is, Caitlin Clark is already one of the most complete offensive players in the game. You can't back off her because she'll bury the shot. You can't double-team her because she'll find the open teammate. Trying to confuse her with exotic defensive schemes might work for a quarter, but Clark adjusts quickly. She learns, adapts, and strikes back. The league is starting to realize that she's not just a temporary storyline, she's a long-term problem for defenders. Of course, not every coach is thrilled with the media obsession surrounding her. Some wish the attention would shift back to the broader WNBA. That's understandable, but ignoring Clark's spotlight isn't fair, especially considering what she's endured physically this season. Take the Chicago Sky, for instance. They made headlines for their rough, physical play against her. Yet their head coach, Teresa Weatherspoon, remains adamant that the focus should stay on basketball itself. She believes the chatter around Clark's celebrity status distracts from the real story: the game, the competition, and the skill level of everyone involved.
To talk about women's basketball is pretty big. It's a big thing. It's huge. But what you want it to be spoken about is the game, the skill, the talent, versatility, how hard we play, what they have to do to be able to step between those four lines all the time, and to talk about competitors. They're out there to compete.
There's nothing wrong with playing tough. It's part of the sport. But brushing off the excessive contact and visible frustration directed at Caitlin Clark feels disingenuous. Teresa Weatherspoon clearly understands Clark's importance to the game's growth, but she often redirects attention away from the drama and back toward X's and O's. Still, Clark's on-court performance speaks volumes. Her composure, leadership, and sheer basketball IQ continue to set her apart. Even if we strip away the off-court storylines, she'd still dominate the headlines on skill alone, whether her critics like it or not. Meanwhile, other coaches are starting to take a different approach, choosing to openly acknowledge Clark's excellence rather than resist it. Seattle Storm head coach Noel Quinn is one of them. After facing Clark, Quinn gave one of the most honest and optimistic evaluations of her game yet, praising her vision, poise, and relentless drive.
A good player, shot making ability, deep. You know, we don't talk enough about her passing. Her being 6 feet, she can see a lot, make a lot of reads, and obviously teams are being aggressive on her, and she's still, you know, finding ways to, you know, score, get to the rim, and assist her teammates. She's confident, you know, she's poised, she's different, she's a beast. You know, we talk about her being a generational talent. She has a lot of talent, and she's going to continue to.
That perspective lines up closely with what fans see every night. Caitlin Clark isn't just putting up numbers, she's changing how the women's game is played and perceived. Many coaches privately share that view, and as Clark keeps producing highlight after highlight, more of them will start to say it publicly. Clark's style, fast-paced, creative, and fearless, is bringing the WNBA closer to the energy and rhythm of the modern NBA. So when Noel Quinn called her a generational talent, it wasn't just flattery. It was recognition of what's unfolding in real time. Of course, there's one coach who knows Clark better than anyone else: Indiana Fever head coach Christy Sides. Their connection is clear. Sides doesn't hide her excitement about coaching such a transformative player, and the mutual trust between them is helping the Fever find their rhythm.
She's the most competitive human being I've ever met. I really compare her to Diana Taurasi. She's always looking to find ways to get better. How can I help the team? What can we do? But she, you know, she found her rhythm tonight. You know, she's, you know, the timing for our players is getting better every game. So some of the ones that, you know, some of the shots that, you know, those passes that she was making early, we just weren't ready for them. Now that chemistry is there, that timing is there, and that's going to keep getting better. But she just wants to win. She just wants to win. And to me, I mean, she's going to be my rookie.
When Christy Sides was asked about the Rookie of the Year race, she didn't just campaign for Clark. She painted a full picture of what makes her special. Sides highlighted Clark's competitiveness, leadership, and maturity, even comparing her mindset to that of WNBA legends. But she also emphasized something deeper, that personal awards don't matter unless they translate into team success. She pointed out how Clark's chemistry with her teammates is improving each game, a sign that the Fever are building something sustainable. And it's not just optimism talking. Coaches across the league, even those who've tried to stop her, are beginning to admit what's becoming obvious. Caitlin Clark is the real deal. Just 22 years old, she's already earned respect from some of the league's sharpest basketball minds. That kind of recognition doesn't come easy for any rookie. She'll continue to face challenges, but if her response so far is any indication, she'll use every bit of it as fuel. Most coaches agree on one thing: Caitlin Clark's best basketball is still ahead of her. And for the fans who followed her journey from college to the pros, this feels like just the beginning of an extraordinary ride, one that could very well end with championship banners hanging in Indiana.